the thing that I want to speak about is I realized that if I took karate into a real self-defense situation, there are so many bad habits that you learn in karate competition, in point fighting especially, that will leave you absolutely nowhere in a real life fight with a real life person, in a no holds barred situation or an MMA situation.
Well, what's a good example of that? Because I'm pretty
So
curious.
number one, you learn to pull punches, right? You're not, it's semi-contact. So
Yeah.
you train your whole life basically just trying to touch somebody's nose, and that's a point. You've scored. So you pull punches. Number two is you like with head kicks and those kind of things. You're trained to leave your kick 6 inches away from the guy's head. So you're not trained to, like Craig mentioned the other day, punch through something, or you're not trained to actually inflict damage and harm on an opponent. And when I started boxing, like, that was a big thing for me. I had to learn to punch somebody in the face, because I was getting fucking blitzed and punched and beaten up shitless in the ring. You know what I mean? And then there was me like touching people on the nose, and like I was quick enough, and I have what they tell me is a very cultured jab, but it doesn't do anything because I'd never been taught to actually try and hit somebody in the face. The second thing was my hands. It was such a bad habit of me from karate, where my hands just stayed down. When you go in for point fighting, you go in, you execute your technique, and you're out, and your hands don't need to be up because they stop the fight after you score a point. You know what I mean?
That's what bugs the shit out of me, by the way. When I was doing karate, I would get into the kumite, get a strike off, or he would get a strike off on me, and it's over. And I'm like, I want to hit back. You know what I mean?
As a person who has spent many a time in a bar brawl, I promise you, no one's coming in and coming out.
Yeah.
The aggression he's coming in with, if he gets hold of you and your guard is down in any way, it's going to be never ending until you're out cold. It's not, there is no holds barred. It's end you so that you don't end him.
And let me tell you, when you're in a boxing ring sparring with like ex-EFC light heavyweight champions, there is no greater educational breeding ground for that point. I was just taking damage, and every time I would go in and I'd land a technique, because like I'd say, your movement, your distance to a degree, and finding gaps and finding openings, karate prepares you pretty well for. But then as I go in and I land a jab in the guy's face, I've been hit 6 times from left ear to right, and I don't even know where I am in the space of 2 seconds after that.
Yeah.
So loads of bad habits, right, that I had to and still am completely having to unlearn and relearn. And it's crazy about martial arts, right? How I've trained martial arts before I started boxing for 12 plus years, and yet I start a new one and I am an absolute complete novice. Do you know what I mean? Like no, unequivocally a novice.
Yeah.
So that's where I started to understand firsthand via experience, studying different martial arts, and how one martial art can be effective as a form of self-defense or as a form of combat, and one can also be less effective.